Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Throne of Seal based on novel. So let's start. In the light god domain, all light magic would instantly gather into Long Houchen's possession. Even a forbidden spell would work that way. In the meantime, the exhaustion of his spiritual energy was minimized to the greatest extent. After Light of Trial was utilized, the horn of the divine unicorn let out another glow of divine light, causing Long Houchen's body to turn multicolored. From the looks of it, their combination seemed like a divine tool. Long Houchen's right hand was pointed forward once again, dispersing a mystic white halo from the light god domain. A strange scene followed, the white ring of light emitted by the four-headed chimera Xingxuan unexpectedly melting like snow. After which, it did not keep spitting at all, stabilizing their own domain with full focus. That's elemental obliterating halo. Chen Hongyu was in a state of shock. Never did he expect elemental obliterating halo could possibly attain such a level, to even be able to weaken a domain. This was definitely not merely a simple elemental obliterating halo, but should be an elemental obliterating halo combined with a god's descent. With the boost from the light god domain, elemental obliterating halo already approached the forbidden spell level. Moreover, it had great restraining effects on elemental abilities, making it a perfect counter against Xingxuan's domain. Against Yang Haoyu, whose cultivation far exceeded his own, Long Houchen's light god domain could only withstand domain clashes, but in front of Chen Hongyu, with whom the gap of cultivation was not so wide, he had the opportunities to show the various uses of this light god domain. An elemental obliterating domain approached the forbidden spell grade, yet consumed only 10,000 spiritual energy out of him. Just 3 beats of his Heart of Eternity were sufficient to replenish these 10,000 spiritual energy. The elemental obliterating halo's effects were even greater than in his expectations. Long Houchen suddenly had a flash of understanding. This time, he extended his finger to the sky, as the Heart of Eternity in his chest pulsed rapidly. One could clearly see a golden halation spread out at an astonishing speed from Houchen's body, clear proof of an extremely high spiritual energy output. The light god domain pulsed abruptly, and its scope suddenly became a flat zone, encompassing a circular area, and looking the same as a spinning woman in long skirt, minus the sexy areas. The round golden area became more and more substantial, and in a wave of Long Houchen's right hand, the now spherical light god domain unexpectedly broke away from his body. He was visibly quite a bit tired, faint traces of sweat visible dripping from his forehead. When the light god domain separated itself from his body, Long Houchen's Heart of Eternity's pulse reached an extremely high speed, to the extent that even the outward spectators could hear its beat. Ring upon ring of multicolored light was also released from the divine unicorn, giving its all to boost Long Houchen. Just what kind of ability could that be, for it to take up such a massive spiritual energy? The most startled of all remained Chen Hongyu, who had believed that Xingxuan's 4-element domain should be able to suppress Long Houchen's light god domain. But when the clash came for real, he realized that this judgment was mistaken. Indeed, the combination of the 4 natural elements should be superior to light, but that's only in terms of overall efficiency. Long Houchen's light god domain was just too pure, entailing light element of peak purity, which already put it on a different standard compared to the 4-element domain's elements. The release of elemental obliterating halo then suppressed his domain at once, and this time, Long Houchen unexpectedly stretched his domain to a huge diameter of 100 meters. Just what could he be planning? The suppressive force from the light god domain disappeared at once, as it stopped conflicting with the 4-element domain. Yet, in its place, Chen Hongyu had a feeling of increasing danger. The 4-element chimera Xingxuan snarled from all its heads, spitting 4 lightning bolts, all of which went off to bombard Long Houchen. This was Chen Hongyu's trump technique. It should not be underestimated, because of its short time of preparation. This strike alone used up over a third of the spiritual energy of the fusion between Xingxuan and him. It already surpassed an ordinary forbidden spell in power, while also stretching over 30 meters. The golden circle's edge made contact with that 4-element bolt. A bizarre chirping sound suddenly rang out throughout the whole stadium, immediately followed with that 4-elemental bolt getting severed and forming whirls around the circlic area. That bolt, which should be of incomparable power, suddenly broke down into 4 bolts of different colors in the shape they had before merging together. The next instant, it all went extinct in the midst of those chirping sounds. In the meantime, that golden fog of light slowly advanced, making contact with the shrunken 4-element domain. A terrible scene emerged. The 4-element domain was suddenly on the edge of getting cut apart. A huge unmanned expanse was filled with light and cut through, and from the elemental clashes, the 4-element domain continuously let out fierce rumbles, each of which caused a 4-colored fog to disperse from the 4-headed chimera, which had to withdraw as a result. Right now, those powerhouses of the 9th step all saw clearly the reason behind Long Houchen's sphere of light, revolving at extremely fast speed, and shaking abundantly. Even more terrifyingly, it had effects similar to the forbidden spell level elemental obliterating halo. One could wonder how terrifying its cutting forces level reached. This was clearly a domain technique. Li Jingji lost his voice. After Long Houchen got suppressed by Yang Haoyu's domain technique the day before, today he showed a pleasant surprise to everyone present here. A domain technique emerging from the light god domain. If Long Houchen had told them that this domain technique had actually emerged just now, in a flash of inspiration, who knew if someone would believe in that? But that was just how that happened. Moreover, Long Houchen clearly sensed that if he could compress this spherical area into a smaller area, this domain technique would reach an even more terrifying level of power. The principles behind this domain technique were simple. It used Long Houchen's self-created light ripples, as well as elemental obliterating halo manipulated through the light god domain. This process was simple to describe, but achieving it was extremely difficult. If not for Long Houchen's light god physique and perfect manipulation of his light god domain, how could he make use of a technique emerging from his domain, thus creating his own domain technique? At this point of the match, the victor was already determined. Although Chen Hongyu and Xingxuan's contracted fusion was a powerful thing, they were suppressed domain-wise, and moreover their spiritual energy recovery was no match against Long Houchen. Adding to that this domain technique of a higher notch of his, he had no other choice than to concede. Rapid fluctuations kept fluctuating, as the terrible rotating light blade was nearing him. Chen Hongyu was actually really unwilling to concede in the competition. Still, the words, "I concede," came out from Xing Xian's 4 large heads, giving Long Houchen quite a surprise. At this time Long Houchen finally understood that Chen Hongyu turned out to have used some mystic technique to fuse with his contracted beast. This way, even if Haoyue was called out, the blood suppression's effects would not be as formidable. Turning back, the chimera dejectedly made way into the gate of light, and the next instant, Chen Hongyu came out, an unsightly expression on his face. As someone regarding his own face with great importance, he really couldn't accept being vanquished by a youngster such as Long Houchen. That was really hard to bear deep in his heart. But even so, what could he do about it? It's not as if he was even able to beat the other party. "What's the name of your previous domain technique?" Chen Hongyu asked gloomily. Long Houchen was startled. "Domain technique? Oh, right. That previous flash of understanding was nothing else than a domain technique. I call it Divine Light Waltz." Divine Light Waltz. Chen Hongyu let out a snort, returning on the side of the spiritual temple without even turning his head back. Sanshui Popo accompanied her husband back, and couldn't help but laugh upon looking at his flushed look. "Let it be. Why get angry with youngsters? You're not even the first one he has beaten. Even Yang Haoyu and Qiu Yonghao have lost. There's no loss of face." Chen Hongyu snorted. "What else than a loss of face could that be? Do you know how old he is?" Sanshui Popo had a glaring look. "What are you enthusiastic about? Do you really need me to tell you that having an old age should not be a premise for ambition? What's even the use of living for 100 empty years? You old thing, hurry back. Listen to me and don't cause troubles for the children." Chen Hongyu felt a chill. Although Sanshui Popo's words were unpleasant to him, it called attention to him. With no doubt, at this session of the temple's great gathering, Long Houchen and Bright Glimmer of Hope had all undoubtedly showed displays of strengths that would give them a decisive position in the new alliance, especially this Long Houchen. And Chen Yinga being his comrade, her husband was reminding himself that he shouldn't be a cause for their unwaverable friendship to get swayed. Thinking back about how Long Houchen had not hesitated to confront the dragon rider demon god Asmodeus for Chen Yinga's sake, Chen Hongnu's complexion became gentler at once. However, he was still unwilling to admit defeat in the verbal arguments. Yinga is really unlucky. If not for a little scoundrel called Long Houchen, our family's Yinga should be the leader in her generation. There was no mistake in what he said, except that this was not only the case for Long Houchen alone, but also Kia. Chen Yinga was also a prideful talent of innate internal spiritual energy exceeding 90. But due to her disposition, her mastery differed to some extent from the likes of Long Houchen or Kia. This was a whole generation of talents, and moreover, these extremely outstanding talents were all gathered together. Long Houchen immediately shut his eyes after returning, silently contemplating on his previous use of the Divine Light Waltz. This was his very first time using that ability, after instantaneous comprehension, as well as his very first domain technique. Only when he really put a domain technique into use, could that domain's formidable strength come out to a truly great extent. Chen Hongnu fusing with his four-headed chimera was already nearing the peak of the third rank in strength, but was left without means in front of his domain technique, ultimately able only to concede. Only, Long Houchen's control over this divine light waltz was still too weak. He was unable to even guarantee that he could utilize it another time. Since he had a flash of comprehension of it, he couldn't let it slip. His powerful light god physique once again showed a great level of decisiveness. The competition still kept going, and once again, the greatest winner of these fourth rounds was still Bright Glimmer of Hope, having already achieved 3 victories by the time of the 5th match out of 12. Moreover, they had some individuals who had yet to appear, these people being Kia, Chen Yinga and Sima Xian. Sima Xian's displays finally came to an end. Facing one of the auxiliary heads of the Mage Temple, a domain-wielding powerhouse, he may have at least put up a fight if he had the gigantic ball of light at his disposal, but unfortunately, without his weapon in hand, though he may have inconvenienced the enemy with his thunder-manipulating spiritual stove, he was still pushed out of the field in the end, thus eliminating one person among Bright Glimmer of Hope's ranks. In the 8th of the 12 matches of the 4th round, the light of selection finally illuminated Kia, her opponent being one mage from the Mage Temple. Her figure flashing, Kia floated out immediately. The instant her footsteps pushed onto the ground, she had already shifted in the field. Speaking of which, Kia's luck was much better than Long Houchen in the first 3 individual rounds. She did not have any tough battles. Even in the 3rd round, she had run into a rather weak opponent, passing through this ordeal with no difficulty, and without even using her domain. Actually, even Sima Xian had a higher reputation in this gathering. When Sima Xian had just lost his match, the spectators both in the stadium and outside let out series of regretful sighs. They really found his coarse and wild fighting style very attractive. Of course, Kia was not really inconspicuous either. At least, since the previous day those powerhouses who had caught sight of the Tower of Eternity did not see her that way. However, the outsiders did not get to catch sight of that scene. Kia's opponent was a veteran mage, clad in a simple black gown and with clear silver hair. His eyes were really characteristic, devoid of the slightest blemish, they contrasted with the wrinkles on his aged face. But these purple eyes looked really similar to a lot of noble demons. This old mage was named Mo Wu, and even within the Mage Temple, very few are familiar with him, to speak nothing of the external temples. He had a title of Elder from the Mage Temple, and hadn't shown any prominent display, achieving victories without any flashy moves. Up to this 4th round, Kia's only impression on this mysterious Mo Wu was the darkness element he wielded. No one would view the members of Bright Glimmer of Hope in contempt, because of their young age anymore. Upon his entrance, Mo Wu's downcast chant reverberated immediately. Kia didn't go invisible, spreading out the huge grey spiritual wings on her back, which turned white the next instant. In a split second, she arrived right in front of Mo Wu. In terms of instant acceleration, even the 6-winged Long Houchen was no match for Kia. In the previous match, Kia's matches were concluded with overwhelming speed. This mage Mo Wu was visibly already prepared. Continuously chanting as a dark purple triangle arose, his body suddenly disappeared right when Kia came in front of him. Kia was slightly alarmed, could this dark mage have used some instant shift, in fact, this match did not permit the use of any equipment. The next instant, this mage Mo Wu already appeared in another direction, with a spinning dark purple triangle visible underneath him. What technique is that? This was the first time for Kia to see such a thing. That was very clearly a self-created technique. She obviously couldn't let the opponent complete his magic. With a cold snort, her body flashed once again, but this time, with a lift of her right arm, a huge pure white sickle had appeared in her palm. The sickle of the god of death couldn't be used, but could be imitated. After all, that was the weapon she held with the greatest mastery. The sickle of the god of death swept at the air, immediately causing a spatial crack to appear. It was a small crack, but the instant it appeared, an essence of some unknown element immediately gathered, and that crack actually displayed a massive attractive power. Not only that, but the sickle of the god of death in Kia's hand swept at 6 angles, where similar cracks appeared, stirring up all the elemental essence in the stadium and causing a state of spatial chaos. She did not know what the opponent did, but a darkness element mage cannot possibly execute teleportations, which means that some spatial magic was surely mixed in. Stirring spatial chaos was obviously to prevent her counterpart from teleporting. All of this happened very fast. Seeing the flickers of pure white colors originating from Kia, Mo Wu's expression changed slightly. The next instant, Kia reappeared in front of him, the sickle of the god of death flashing in her hand and slowly hacking at him. Its blade edge carried a sharp, highly invasive aura. But shockingly, Mo Wu did not draw back, but stepped up instead, pointing his right hand at the empty space, where a purplish-black ray took shape. Just as if the air had become his drawing board, he drew a specific imprint with his hand. What Kia sensed was completely different from the onlookers. With these gestures, Mo Wu's body immediately looked illusory, and countless Mo Wu shapes arose in front of her, causing his opponent's murderous spirit, which had locked onto him, to become fainter. In a white flash, that purplish-black ray disappeared, and this instant, Mo Wu's magic was completed. Purplish-black pillars appeared out of nowhere and surrounded Kia's body in a flash, turning into a circular cage trapping her within. Hell's Cage, a powerful darkness attribute spell of the 9th step. Kia's sickle was swept horizontally, but only passed through, as if there was no collision at all. But when she tried to rush out with her body, she immediately felt an acute sting spread all over her body as the massive darkness element directly penetrated inside her body. That's... Kia was startled, but had the same calm disposition as usual. She did not panic in front of this kind of situation. Her sickle of the god of death disappearing, she placed her hands in front of her chest, her eyes even closing down. She seemed to be sensing something, looking for a hole in the Hell's Cage. Seeing his Hell's Cage being so effective, Mo Wu couldn't help but reveal a dim smile. As he kept up the incantation, some purplish-black halations spread underneath his feet, and very quickly, these halations took a solid form, ascending over his body to take a shape close to an altar. Raising his right hand, a black staff appeared in Mo Wu's hands. Although only formed with spiritual energy, it made him look extremely sumptuous and mighty right now. Purplish-black rays circulated around the top of the staff, turning into a magnificent mage gown covering him, and instantly causing his demeanor to gain greatly in might. A terrifying pressure arose itself around his body, a large area of purplish-black clouds revolving around the altar he had created. As these purplish-black halations fluttered, some electric light could faintly be seen on it. Since when did the Mage Temple have another powerhouse like that? This was clearly the power of a domain. Those from the other 5 temples couldn't help but cry out in alarm. This Mo Wu's attainments and cultivation were far higher than they expected. Not only was Kia trapped by this mage, but he moreover displayed a domain, which was clearly purely a boosting domain. His next magic would surely gain an impressive deal of might. Some purplish-black symbols started to drift around the altar, as his downcast chant reverberated through the whole stadium. One could faintly see the ground turn unwittingly into that purplish-black color. The cracks left earlier by Kia also closed entirely. Destructor of darkness, ruler of darkness. Descend, dark sovereign. As his chant went on, Mo-Wu's eyes shot up with purple electric light, and a purple hexagram appeared in front of his altar. There, a massive image started to take shape, drifting inside that hexagram. It was a human figure measuring about 5 meters, clad in a dark purple armor, and with a pair of large curved horns extending from the back of its head. But as that individual was masked, his face was not visible. In his right hand was a huge sword, gushing out with purplish black light. Just as he appeared, he gave off an incorporeal pressure. Even the defensive barrier's defense gave off a kind of stifling feeling. What a powerful dark mage. Lin Xin couldn't help but remark in alarm. This was clearly a formidable dark mage, who had furthermore summoned a dark sovereign of terrifying strength, whose might could even compare with the post-fusion four-headed chimera of Chen Hongyu. The mage temple actually had such a killing move in store. This was really something no one expected. If only Boss was the one facing him. Han Yu couldn't help but let these words slip. Mo-Wu was a dark mage, so Long Haochen had the light god domain to suppress him perfectly, and had naturally no fears to have. But how about Kia? The strongest of bright glimmer of hope was undoubtedly Long Haochen, followed by Kia. The blow if Kia were to lose her match would be considerably huge to them. Be at ease, Kia will surely make it. Long Haochen had already opened his eyes at some point. The start of Kia's battle, and the huge threat confronting her immediately came to his senses. Right now, Kia seemed to be at an absolute disadvantage, but was that really the case? After the Dark Sovereign appeared, it did not let out any special sound. Floating in mid-air, he arrived in one stride in front of Kia, locked by Hell's Cage. Lifting the huge sword in his hand high, he abruptly struck it onto Kia. After completing this magic, Mo-Wu 8 had his eyes shut, sitting cross-legged above that dark altar which was his domain, able to increase sharply the might of all his darkness elemental magic, as well as increase his magic recovery. Perhaps this couldn't be counted as a very strong domain, because of its important limitations, but if one were to allow him to take control of the battle, that domain would show the most of its capability. Facing the strike of the huge sword, Kia's body disappeared instantly, and without the slightest prior indication. Mo-Wu noticed almost instantly that the dark purple triangle appeared again. Right away, his body disappeared from that altar. White traces appeared on that dark altar, instantly smashed it to pieces, and turned into countless purplish black airstreams. Kia appeared right where Mo-Wu used to be, floating there. Mo-Wu was shocked, because he had no idea how Kia escaped from his Hell's Cage. That was a locking magic of the 9th step. Furthermore, Kia had shown no signs of movement from there. How could he know how strong Kia had gotten after breaking through the 9th step? The instant that Hell's Cage had surfaced, she had used a doppelganger technique to be trapped in her stead, and at the same time utilized invisibility. Another person's doppelganger couldn't last for so long, and would immediately get found out in front of a mage's sharp senses, so they would not even be able to escape the lock of the Hell's Cage. But Kia was not the same. As the saint daughter of Samsara, she had the power of purification. Being an assassin with the most optimum gifts, she wouldn't be fit to be called such if she was unable to escape the opponent's lock. However, for the sake of keeping her doppelganger stable, she couldn't blindly go into action after escaping, or it would immediately disappear. Only when Mo-Wu's summoned Dark Sovereign had attacked did Kia abruptly launch an attack. However, Mo-Wu really had a precise judgment, using his teleportation-like technique to escape Kia's hit once again. Even so, his garment was dripping in sweat. If he were just a bit slower, Kia's attack would have landed on him, therefore achieving victory. The Dark Sovereign visibly sensed something going wrong, and a dark purple radiance gushed out from his chest. It was not directed at Kia, but at Mo-Wu, who had just gotten teleported in front of him. Figure flashing, Mo-Wu suddenly disappeared in the dark purple radiance originating from the Dark Sovereign, for a similar result to Chen Hongyu's previous performance. This way, unless Kia vanquished the Dark Sovereign, she would have no way to attack Mo-Wu. This was what Mo-Wu felt to be his only solution. The most optimum situation would be to have the Dark Sovereign attack Kia, while he recovers his spiritual energy. That way, given enough time, he could even summon another Dark Sovereign. But this was not possible anymore. Although he could command the Dark Sovereign while merged with him, none of his spiritual energy could be recovered in that situation. To say nothing about making use of that domain, his only possibility of victory was now to beat Kia using this Dark Sovereign. Mo Wu had a definite faith in the Dark Sovereign's capability. Just in cultivation alone, it had the strength of the 9th step's 2nd rank. Yesterday, Kia's Tower of Eternity had truly shocked everyone present, but that was after all an object, prohibited in this individual competition. While empty-handed, could an assassin really win against a heavy-armored Dark Sovereign? Done running around. The corners of Kia's mouth traced a cold smile. Of course she knew that their greatest rival in this trip was the Mage Temple, and would show no kind feelings to a mage from the Mage Temple. The sickle of the god of death formed of light of purification was slowly raised. She did not fly again, but came running in front of the Dark Sovereign. The sickle of the god of death dragging behind her, Kia's eyes turned white. Her absolutely cold and beautiful demeanor surged, forming along with her massive sickle a magnificent yet mystical scene. Although her opponent's display was also quite dazzling, this scene caused the absolute majority of the spectators to unconsciously put their faith on Kia. After all, dark creatures were originally abhorred, to say nothing about Kia's beautiful yet so young traits. The Dark Sovereign's eyes flashed with a purple glint, his right feet stomping heavily onto the ground as he took hold of his massive purplish-black heavy sword in both of his hands. The most frightening aspect of this Dark Sovereign lay in his extremely compact wielded darkness spiritual energy. It was not externalized, but attached onto his weapon, which gained a great deal of bursting power. Kia did not evade, nor did she use any special technique, just brazenly swung down her sickle of the god of death, her whole body flickering with white light, as her imposing manner rose to the peak. Despotic strike. That was an ability evolved from despotic thrust. Right now, Kia's move was full of an indescribably powerful tyrannical force. In a tingling clash, the sickle of the god of death in Kia's hands broke down. After all, that was not the real sickle of the god of death, just a condensation made of spiritual energy. In terms of offense and defense, it was far below the sickle of the god of death of divine grade. But that Dark Sovereign was not well off either. One could clearly see that during the clash between the two opponents, the purplish-black aura spreading out from his body was totally repelled, as if trying to break away from his body, while his movements also turned sluggish. Kia really showed an unyielding performance, condensing another sickle of the god of death in her hand. An unrestrained white glow flashed out in the air, causing lacerating sounds to arise from the loud explosive sound of a chop at the opponent's heavy sword. The Dark Sovereign let out a low howl, causing purplish-black colored fog to rise up, and rise sharply its imposing manner as well. Purplish-black blisters rushed up from underneath the ground, turning into countless purplish-black rays interweaving in the air. That was a domain, the Dark Sovereign's domain. Although no one here knew its name, that was no doubt a domain specialized in large area attacks. Those previous black blisters were not all Mo Wu's, but from this Dark Sovereign, a creature of darkness of the 2nd rank of the 9th step, which already had its own domain. The darkness summons of this Mo Wu were simply even more frightening than the spiritual temples. But what shocked the crowd even more was the scene of Kia's next move, already about 10 meters above the Dark Sovereign's head. The Dark Sovereign's domain had already erupted, and as that was a crowd-attacking domain, it did not give the slightest space to possibly dodge the attack. Mo Wu was already fully prepared. As long as Kia would be unable to resist anymore, he'd immediately stop the attack, but an unforgettable scene came next to his sight. Floating in mid-air, Kia took a praying posture, and cleansing white glows turned into petals spreading downwards. A miraculous scene took place. Upon contact with these white lights, the purplish-black radiance coming out from the Dark Sovereign's domain immediately dispersed into nothingness. As those falling white petals kept increasing, the dark purple light became lesser and lesser, just as if purifying flowers had suddenly grown from the midst of the boundless darkness, bringing in universal hope. In this fantastic purification, all darkness was changed to nothingness, gradually giving ground to the light. Li Jingji opened his mouth wide in shock. He could grasp some of the theories behind Long Houchen's light god domain, as it was, after all, purely relevant to light. But the display of Kia's domain far exceeded his knowledge. That power. The Dark Sovereign's body shook slightly. Raising his head to look at Kia in midair, his body suddenly shivered upon sight of the domain of purification dispersed at rapid speed around her. Immediately, he reappeared right on the edge of the stadium, lifting the heavy sword in his hand, slashing it rapidly, causing a dark purple hexagram to surface, and immediately making way inside. What followed was a scene of an abruptly shaking Dark Sovereign, before Mo Wu's body was also thrown away, as the Dark Sovereign directly disappeared in that purple hexagram. The Dark Sovereign having just gone away, his domain naturally dissipated as well, leaving only a sweaty Mo Wu. He did not understand why the Dark Sovereign left so hastily despite being in no position of inferiority. Could it be that it was starting to rain, as he had left some clothes to dry? This monstrous question flashed in Mo Wu's mind, as the only thing left in the air was Kia with her unleashed domain, calmly confronting him. I know that while you major in darkness magic, you also have a mastery in spatial magic. Perhaps your spatial magic can allow you to keep teleporting, but I want to see if your teleporting can succeed while in my domain of purification. White light spread in front of Mo Wu. The instant his body came in contact with Kia, he immediately understood why the Dark Sovereign had fled in panic. An indescribable pain surged in the depths of his soul. As his body shook intensely, he abruptly stated, "I concede." Part 1 end here.